Let's talk about working with color in InDesign. Color in InDesign can be brought up from your Swatches panel. Under Window, we have our Color section, Swatches. Now when you're applying color in InDesign to a shape or a stroke or a fill or text, simply select that object with your selection tool, and in your Swatches panel you can then apply one of the very basic colors. The basic colors: cyan, magenta, yellow, black, red, green, and blue. You'll notice paper is a color here instead of white. That's simply the color of the paper. That's why it's called paper. Now, so we don't technically have white, but that is what InDesign calls white. When you're applying color to an object or a line, in the Swatches panel, you have to make sure that you select either the stroke to apply the color to or the fill. Same is true when you're working in the toolbar. That's going to switch between the fill and the stroke. So if you'd like to fill an object with a color, make sure the fill is brought forward and click on the color to add that to your object. Now, in your control bar, this same swatch panel is broken out into the fill and the stroke. So you don't need to bring the fill or the stroke forward here. You can simply go to your fill swatch menu and apply the fill color that way, and then your stroke menu and apply it that way. It's two different menus, but it's the exact same swatch panel with the exact same colors. Then, if you don't see much of a stroke, check to make sure that this is something other than 0, because you may apply a color and you may not see it, simply because the stroke weight is set to 0. So a color with 0 stroke weight will apply nothing. So, select any shape. Again, choose your fill or your stroke. Make sure you choose the right one to apply it. In the Properties panel, you can also click on your fill and your stroke icons to call up a slightly revised panel. And here in this panel, we click on it and we have the ability to go through our swatches like we did in the other areas. We could also go and we could create a tint of this color that we've chosen. We can also apply a gradient. Now, if we choose our swatch or our tint colors here, you see that we can apply this to our frame, or if there's text inside it, apply it to our text. This is a slightly different version of the Swatches panel, even though they do very much the same thing. And same with the stroke panel here. You're not going to have a different type of swatch panel. It's all the same, slightly different layout, only because the Properties panel is newer. Now, one unique feature that I find to be quite fascinating with this is the ability to not have to worry about bringing your stroke and fill to the front, because inevitably you have the wrong one selected. It happens. A shortcut to switch the fill or the stroke prominence here is just the letter X. You can see when I type the letter X, it'll then make the stroke active and then the fill active right there. Same over here in your toolbar, X just simply swaps between the two of them. Now, if you'd like to go in and actually flip the colors, make the stroke color the fill color and the fill color the stroke color, Shift X will flip those colors. Interesting thing. But what I find to be truly interesting is this. Foregoing the fill and the stroke selection here, I'm going to grab the green color and I'm going to drag and drop directly on my object. Whether it's selected or not doesn't have any bearing on this. If I drag this color over and I touch my object and go inside, my cursor shows up with a square. If I drop it on there, it fills my object. But if I take another color, or that same color, and I touch the stroke, that's the fill, that's the stroke, I can drag and drop and apply that color to whatever I touch. So I no longer have to make sure that the stroke is active or the fill is active. I can drag and drop directly on here. Nice way to do this. If I'm dealing with text inside a container, I'm going to right click and fill with some placeholder text. I could select the text to then apply the color to the text. You'll notice in my Swatches panel, my Properties panel, and my Fill panel here, now the fill shows the letter T. With whatever I have selected, it will select and fill that color. Whatever I have selected will then apply that color to the selected text. If I'd like all the text in the container to be filled with that color, I can select the shape with my selection tool, go into my Swatches panel and switch over from the actual container attributes to the text attributes. And then when I apply a color, you'll notice that all the text in the container will be filled with that color, regardless of whether I have the type tool active or not. I can then go back over to the actual container attributes and I can fill the container with a color. And I can also put a stroke around that container as well. All of these things can be added to one single container. I don't need to have a separate container for the type, a separate container for the stroke, and a separate container for the fill. It's all one container. All of this can live together. Now, another nice feature, being able to go in and sample colors from one object, apply them to another. I'd like to take this triangle and I would like to have these attributes applied to this triangle. If I grab my eyedropper tool, which is the letter I have my object selected, and with the eyedropper tool, I can click on any other object and all those attributes will be applied to the object. Now my cursor is loaded, which means whatever other object I click on, it will also take whatever I've sampled and apply it to those objects as well. Stroke, fill, corner options, tint, opacity, you name it. What will it pick up? Well, double click on your eyedropper tool and it shows you everything that it'll pick up. All of these can be turned on and turned off. Lots of attributes that can be picked up from the eyedropper tool and then reapplied. Now, other things you can do with your eyedropper tool as well. If I take my eyedropper tool and I select this shape and it fills it with that color, great. But what happens if I then want to sample this color? You'll notice that my eyedropper is flipped the other way and it's full. If you hold down your Option or Alt key, this will allow you to reset and resample another color that then can then be applied. So you don't have to get out of this tool and go back to reset it while you're working. Nice feature. Now, let's talk about ways of creating other colors. Simple. In the Swatches panel, drop-down menu, New Color Swatch. Comes up with our sliders here. Why is it in CMYK? Well, InDesign is pretty much a print-based application. So our colors are going to be print-based colors, just like your printer, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. So I can slide my sliders back and forth and click Add, and each new color will then appear at the bottom of my Swatches panel, and I can create as many colors as I'd like, add as many colors as I'd like, and when I'm done adding the colors, I can simply click Done, and there's all my colors that I've added to my swatch panel. Now, I'm going to select this shape and I'm going to apply this purple fill here. Apply this purple fill here. I'd like to make this a lighter purple. So, going to my Swatches panel, I can select my fill, and I have my tint slider here that allows me to tint this color at a different tint of this same color. As I come back here, I want to change this color purple. Very easy to do. If I double click on this color in my Swatches panel, and I change this color, it will change this color every place that I've applied it. Text, fill, stroke, or a tint, and it will keep that same tint that I do it. That simple. So again, there's my yellow. If I double click on my yellow and I change it, I click OK. Every place where that yellow was used, it simply is replaced. That red, maybe I want to make it more orange, click OK. Every instance is changed. That simple. Color in InDesign is made to be very, very, very user-friendly. Now what I'd like to talk about is being able to go in and use this color in multiple different documents, not just InDesign, but maybe other InDesign files, or maybe Photoshop or Illustrator. So with my libraries, if you go into the window menu and call up your Creative Cloud libraries, here's my library. The last library that I had created was called Color, and you can create a new library just by clicking the plus. I'm just going to select my library here. Now when I go in and I create a new color swatch in the Swatches panel, you'll notice that you have the ability to add your color to that Swatches panel. So as I create this mauve, it adds it to my swatches and my Swatches panel. I go with a medium blue, kind of a turquoise, I add that, that adds it to my swatch panel, and here too. I go with a little violet, and again, it adds it right here. Why is this useful? Well, if you start up a new InDesign file, What happens when you create a new InDesign file here, all those colors that you had that you created for your InDesign file only stay with that InDesign file. But when you have your Libraries panel and you create a shape and you'd like to then apply that color to your shape, you can simply select it right from your Libraries panel. It applies it to your shape based on your fill or your stroke that you have selected. Plus, it automatically adds that color to your swatch panel. That easy. Yes, that easy. Going back to my original document here, interesting things that you can do with the swatch panel as well as the library panel. The library panel can hold your colors as well as your graphics. So if I select this object and I would like to add these colors, both this kind of burnt umber and this light blue, to my Libraries panel, I can select my object, go to the plus at the bottom of the library panel. I can choose fill color, stroke color, or the graphic, or add everything. If I add it all, it's going to add the colors, and it's also going to add my graphic. By adding that graphic, this allows me to simply drag and drop from my library and place that exact same object in here. So if you find yourself drawing particular shapes or lines with particular style ends or text containers with or without text, you drag them in your library panel, and whatever you drag in, you can drag out, and you get that perfect shape, size. The same thing that was created, dragged in here, comes as you drag out. Any colors that you use, it automatically adds it to the Swatches panel here. If you'd like to explore swatches further, one of the other things that InDesign has under the window menu, under the color panel, is your color themes. Color themes allow you to create using your color wheel or explore and do a search for any type of search term here and type in the search term. User-generated themes will come up here. If you like any of these themes, you can click on the three dots, add them directly to your swatches in your Swatches panel, like so. If you'd like to edit this theme, you can click on those three dots, edit the theme, go in and click on your paddles and pick different colors that are making up this 5-color set right here. And you can go and you can desaturate by dragging the paddles in, saturate by dragging the paddles out, and then at the bottom you can go and you can make these colors lighter or darker based on whatever paddles you have selected here, and you can make that color darker or you can make it lighter right here. If you edit these colors and then would like to put these into your Swatches panel, again, go to your little grid here and click Add to Swatches. If you found a color that you like and you'd like to create a color harmony out of that color, you can click on that color, go to your color harmonies, and you can create monochromatic, triad, complementary colors here, all based on your base color that is right here in the middle. So if you're looking for monochromatic colors based on that, you get those, add those to your swatches right in here. They always add at the bottom. So the color themes is a nice way of picking and choosing colors, quickly exploring your colors, and putting them into your Swatches panel. Now, if you like to pick your colors by going into your color picker here, that can be done as well. Double click on your color picker, and you have your choice of HSB, RGB, or lab colors here, as well as CMYK. So if you go into your HSB, you're going to, if you do your saturation, you're going to get your traditional looking color spectrum here, and your hue and your brightness right there, or you can do your RGB, your LAB colors, as well as any CMYK colors that you choose. One nice thing with this is that once you do choose a color here, and you choose either HSB, RGB, LAB, or CMYK, you can add the swatch directly from your color picker into your Swatches panel, something that you can't do in Illustrator or Photoshop. And it automatically puts it at the bottom of the list of your colors right here, and that's your color. So you can use your color picker to go in and pick a color, add that swatch directly, and it works wonders. Gradients, easy. If I go into my Swatches panel and I'd like to create a gradient, that's easily done here by clicking on the drop-down menu, New Gradient Swatch. I have a linear or a radial gradient. To change the colors, you click on your gradient ramp stop. The white stop will call up sliders The black stop will call up all of your swatches, of which you can change whatever stop color you want to choose from your stop color dropdown. So maybe I want to choose a stop color from one of my swatches, go into my Swatches panel, choose the stop color, click on the other stop, again, call up my swatches here, and apply that stop. To add more colors to my gradient ramp, click anywhere under the gradient ramp, and either use my sliders to change that color, or add a color and choose from my list of swatches from here, and apply that color. You can move these stops all around. You can also pull any stop off the ramp to remove it. When you're done with this gradient, you can click Add, and it gets added to your swatch panel, and click Done. Here, because the fill had been selected, there's my gradient swatch. Click the letter G to call up your gradient tool, and you can click and pull, and you can control the distance and the length of that gradient. Under the window menu, under Color, under Gradient, you can choose your gradient panel and choose whether you want a linear or a radial gradient. You can also reverse the direction of that gradient in both linear and radial mode. If you're in linear mode, you can then adjust the angle of that. If you don't want to use your letter G or your gradient tool to pull that at the angle, you can set it at a very specific angle. Under the radial gradient, you can click and pull and create a different point of origin. One unique feature with this is if you click with your radial gradient and you go to your point of origin and then click off to the side here, it will allow you to create kind of an offset, kind of like this supernova or this comet look when you're doing a radial gradient, something that's very unique. You can apply a gradient to both the fill and the stroke. And here's a perfect case of just because you can doesn't mean you should, but you can. And you can also apply it to type, which you should never do. But anyway, I just wanted to let you know. So once you've created your swatches and you've created your gradients and you've got your Creative Cloud libraries, you're all set to go. So what happens when you start up a new InDesign file and you'd like to have all these swatches in your new document? Well, if you save this file with all of your swatches in it, you start up a new file and you find out you don't have the swatches, an easy way to load your swatches in is go to your Swatches panel, click on the cheese grater, choose Load Swatches, navigate to where that is in your file, open up that InDesign file, and all of those colors will come in. That's a quick and easy way to then go in and be able to apply these colors directly without having to make everything else. So that's just a really quick overview of colors in InDesign. Easy to create, easy to edit, and easy to transfer to other files, create tints, create gradients, all with super simplicity.